Hey everybody, welcome back to Battle Ready Inc., the channel all about bringing you as much nerdy content as possible. Today for you, we're back in Dragon Village M. We got a whole new setup for you guys, and for that we're going to cover the brand new dragon Spirit. Alright, it's kind of controversial, but let's get in here and see why. As always, if you're new to the channel, please like the video and subscribe. If you like Dragon Village M content, this is the channel for you. I cover Dragon Village M content every week, if at all possible. Sometimes more, sometimes I don't always make my weekly, quota there. But I do appreciate any kind of support you guys can give me, as I just pretty much do this mostly for fun. I do have some awesome Patreon supporters. Shout out to you guys, Night Raven, Tricky Z, Isandring, Anthony. You guys are the reason I'm still here making videos. I mean, simple as that. If I didn't have Patreon supporters, I might have given up a long time ago. So thank you guys. I do appreciate that greatly. But enough about me rambling. Let's get in here and let's look at this this new dragon. So it is an attack type, 5-star, nat 5. It's in, I think the fire type is the rate up right now. So pretty interesting. The baby's pretty cute. I don't know, something about the rest of it just doesn't do anything for me. I don't know, I could be alone on that. I've seen so many dragons that it's kind of hard to have one that impresses me these days. Alright, so let's look in here and get after these abilities though. Alright, so leadership ability, attack type, or attacking. All allies' attack is increased by 35%. That's a pretty solid leadership ability. I mean, you can't complain. It's going to help lots of things. However, who's it going to help the most, right? It's going to help your attacker, of course. If you're running a 3 mana cost, you're probably only running 1 attacker. You might be running 2 3 mana cost attackers if you're running a Loris. Because it's going to drop the timer and stuff and give you the double mana regen when you use their skill. So then you're going to get more use out of this attack buff, because it's not going to really help your support types. It's not going to help your tanks. The only healers it's going to help are the ones that scale off of attack. So if you're running a healer at least that scales off of attack, and you've got this guy in your party, then it might be worth it. However, if he's the only person getting any sort of benefit from attack, I don't think it's going to necessarily be worth it. Which is a shame, because attack, flat just attack increases are pretty rare. Let's jump over to this drag skill. Alright. So cooldown 32 seconds, target count of 5, and it's a cone spread, right? And we're just increasing up the damage. Power is greatly increased based on critical damage. This is, I'm pretty sure this is a cut and paste of Dark Arcana. Yeah, used to be the most valued dragon in the entire game, the most broken dragon in the entire game. 32-second cooldown, target count of 5, spread is a cone. It's a small spread, but even then, in PvP, you're hitting the whole enemy team, so it doesn't matter if it's small, medium, large, whatever. Oh look, power is greatly proportionally, or increased proportionally to your critical damage. So exactly the same skill, just a little different of a cone, which again, in PvP, you're going to be hitting everything anyway, so it's not going to matter that much. So yeah, we'll jump back over here. So essentially the same thing. Potential to do a lot of damage, yes. But also, we're kind of running into that format of 3 mana cost dragons aren't really doing it for attack types anymore. In PvP, that is. Really any content. The problem is we have too many dragons that support 2 mana cost dragons so much better. Only thing 3 mana cost attackers have is Loris, and Loris triggering that double mana regen is not consistent enough, because in PvP you're going to be wanting to pop your first triple mana attack, and as soon as that you get that triple mana back, you want to pop your second triple mana attack on your next dragon. Unfortunately, Loris's timer hasn't reset on that double mana regen, so you don't trigger it again. So that's the big problem I have with these triple mana attackers. They're worth using as a one of, but not really as a two of. I run it as a triple mana attacker as a one of with Dark Arcana. Dark Arcana, and I switch back and forth between him and Varus, but they still both have their issues. Let's jump over here to this other skill, though. Oh, I do want to point out that these are all the same here. So this drag skill, this is kind of the buff for it, right? So increase damage for the main attack by 10%. 10% also equates into a 1.1 times boost. So what is that? Fire Evil Dragon, I think, has a 1.1 times boost. It's hardly anything. It's a little tiny 10 times buff. 10%, not 10 times. That would be nuts. So it makes up for it with this second part here. Inflict 40% extra damage on defense-type enemies. I don't know. I kind of have problems with this skill, this part as well. As a DPS, right off the gate, out the gate on a Coliseum match, you want to either drop their healer or drop a DPS. And we're not getting any buffs against either of those. The only time I could see something like this would be really getting, the bang for your buck would be if you're fighting a dragon that takes damage in place of, X amount of teammates. Stuff like Ongris, or is it Gaian or Chaos? One of those, they take damage. Trophius. Then you're going to start getting that benefit, because then you're going to be able to just blow that dragon away and get it off the board, so it stops protecting the other units. That's kind of the only sign I could see this being useful. But that's so situational. It's not going to be useful in every single type of scenario. And that's going to be the same for all these guys here. And you want to compare this back to Dark Arcana, right? So we're getting this 10% buff here versus Dark Arcana's final skill, which is just a flat attack 20% up. So this is going to be applying to not only the drag skill, but also just the basic attack is going to get a buff from this, whereas the other one only gives that buff on the drag skill. This applies to the whole dragon. Not only the basic attack, not only the drag skill, but also the passes. The passes like this one that do damage to the enemy team. The attack buff flat 20% is a great comparison there of just a better all-around option. So let's jump over here to these other passives here. Every set duration, inflict damage to a random enemy. 3 of them. It's okay. That's pretty good. And remove one buffs, plural there, weird, from attack and defense type targets. Interesting. So it only applies to attack and defense types. So you're not gonna, if you're fighting a team that has like 2 healers or 2 supports, you're either they're running 2 healers and a support, which is gonna be 3 of over half the team, or 2 supports and 1 healer, again over half the team, and you don't get to hit any of them. Well, you'll hit them, you'll do a little bit of damage, but you're not gonna remove any kind of buff. That's a shame. Then the fire type here, 100% chance to reduce defense for 10 seconds of an attack and defense type. I mean, that's okay. But again, only affecting these 2 here. So, and it's not going to even go off until you're 8 seconds into the fight. So do you wait for 8 seconds to use your drag skill? I mean, the drag skill is usually charged in, 2-3 seconds into the fight. So you're going to wait another, 5 seconds or so before to get this to go off and pray that you hit a defense type or an attack type to be able to reduce their defense and then use your drag skill? Probably not. You're probably going to want to fire your big attack as soon as possible before they start getting buffs. And I'll go into that in a little more in just a second. And then the last one here, random 3 targets, again, 80% chance to silence attack and defense types for 5 seconds. That's pretty cool. You don't see silence on DPS hardly ever. It kind of a toss-up on supports, right? If you've seen my Coliseum or PvP guide, I talk about running supports that either can silence or have buff removal. So a comparison to this would be something like a Water Gale Dragon, right? Who can silence and also removes the 2 beneficial effects off of dragons. So you can either have this and try to silence, like a Water Wonder Dragon is a perfect example. I use it a lot. Silence it before it can use its zombie state. Whereas, Water Gale, they just remove it because it targets the person with the lowest health. This right here is random, so it may hit them, it may not hit them. That's just kind of the luck of the draw on that. That's what the problem with these random enemies is. If it focus fired attack and defense type, like prioritize them, yeah, I'd be all about this. I mean, really, all of these would be so much better if the target wasn't random and instead prioritize these that it affects. I mean, if we're not affecting these, then what's the point? Passive here, crit rate is increased by 20%. This is going to be the same on all of them. So completely overlooking the passive here, just looking at raw DPS, raw damage here. What we got this that scales off of crit damage, and then we get a little 10% buff. And then crit rate is increased by 20%. Again, I want to go back and look at Dark Arcana as that comparison. It's been in the game for a long time, and it was the #1 for a long time as well. Its last passive here is every set duration increase critical rate for 20 seconds. And you can reduce the cooldown of this to every 15 seconds. So, so for 5 seconds at a time, you're going to have double crit rate up. And so crit rate is 30%, so you're going to double that every so often and have 60%. You can argue that the other one is a passive, so it's always active, so you're not going to be getting rid of it. You can't just use buff removal and it be gone. However, with this, they're going to use buff removal on you, sure, but they're only going to be taking away one of your 2, or if they take away your 1, you're going to get another one right back in just a few seconds. So yeah, you're always going to have 30% crit rate up, and every so often 60% crit rate up. So that's already better than 20% just all the time, Also, silence will get rid of that constant one, the passive. Silence gets rid of all passives. So whereas once you apply this buff, it just sits there. The only way to get rid of it is buff removal, or the timer just runs out on it. So if they silence you, you're still going to keep your crit rate. And there's a lot of silence running around in PvP. So overall, I think Dark Arcana is still better, still remains supreme. If you guys, have a different of opinion, definitely put it in the comments. I'll definitely read it. If you can change my mind, I try to be as open as possible to change my mind. If you have a valid reason for it, I'm all game to listen. All right. I do appreciate any kind of support that you guys give me. Speaking of, I hope you guys like the format of this video. If you have any issues with it, please let me know. Put that in the comments as well. If it sounds weird, if it looks weird, anything like that, any suggestions. I know that I'm covering up part of the screen now a little bit. I actually should have dropped that behind the screen once I started filming, but it didn't really matter for this video so much. So I'm covering up a little bit more, but it's also bigger, right? And I think it's just more appealing to the eye. That orange was pretty harsh, whereas the purple was more of a softer color, so it's not quite so impactful. I don't know, just toying around with something. I got a whole new setup pretty much. We got the new camera, which I've used once or twice in a couple videos now, so still playing with that. My desk has completely moved and shifted, so we got a whole new background here. As well as I have a brand new computer, and so I've had to re-download everything and start from scratch, rebuilding templates for my recordings, all kinds of stuff. My editing software. It's been just a big old pain. It's actually the second time I've recorded this video, so hopefully this time it works. I probably should have tested that before I spent all this time. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. And yeah, just like the video and you know, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I do appreciate that. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.